Hey there, welcome to Bandit's Keep. I'm Daniel. Today we're going to talk a little bit about D&D as a toolbox. So, my understanding is, and I was not there, the original intention of Dungeons & Dragons was really to be a toolbox, a set of rules, if you will, or guidelines, if you will, to help you build your own kind of fantasy world / campaign and play with your friends and create all these things. From that, and early on, it seems like that the idea of like adventure modules and stuff was not really in their mind. It seemed like they had the ones for the tournaments, obviously, but the idea was that people would just make their own stuff. And D&D, in my opinion, is great for that. It's designed for that, especially your earlier editions. I think the more you add to the game, the harder it becomes to homebrew or to change, though it doesn't make it impossible. Clearly, there's lots of people homebrewing 5th edition. As we speak, there's homebrewing going on, I can tell you. So it's not like you can't anymore. But so I think this is still relevant for no matter what kind of D&D you play. What made me think of this was the other day I was watching on YouTube, surprisingly, and an old Austin City Limits came up with John Prine. And if you don't know who John Prine is, then you probably should go watch some John Prine, then come back. But well, actually, maybe do it at the end. So anyways, he's introducing one of these songs that like everybody sings along to, and of course they're filming it, right? So he says, okay, I'm going to play this song, so you guys should sing along. The cameras might be on you, so, if you don't sing very well, just move your lips. And if you don't know the words, we'll just make something up. That's what I did. And it made me think, yeah, that's kind of, right? That's what he did, right? That's where the song came from. He made it up. That's where D&D came from. Somebody made it up. So why can't we make up our own thing? And wouldn't that be almost better in a sense? I think a lot of times we're afraid to do that because we think, well, it's printed in a book and a professional writer wrote this adventure, so it's better. But is it really better? Is it better for your group of friends that you know? I suppose if you're running at a convention or for strangers or whatever, running something more, we'll call it generic, makes sense. But when you know the people in front of you, especially in a long-running campaign, you can create and sculpt and change the story and change the setting and change the character classes and do whatever you want to suit those people in front of you. So there's actually, funny this comes up too, is because I guess it'll be the Sunday after this video goes live, which is the 29th, I believe, of August. I'll be running on Adorama XP Twitch channel. I've done that a few times. If you guys missed that and you like to watch games, please join me over there. But anyways, I've decided to, because now it's going to be a regular thing, I decided to start to run and do more of a campaign. But because it's going to be spread out a little bit, I just wanted to run something that was more like a dungeon delve. So I know people are like, oh, good, you're going to run that mega dungeon you're making. No, I'm going to run Palace of the Silver Princess. So if people don't know about this dungeon, I can talk a little bit more about this if people are curious, but you can Google it. It's not a big deal. Yes, I am holding the orange version in my hand, but that's because I printed it myself. This is not an actual print of the orange version. If I had it, I'd be holding on to it. So this module is interesting because it is B3, so the third in the basic set of modules, the Mulve basic. And what's interesting about it is that if you look at B1, although I guess B1 came out during Holmes, you historians will tell me the difference. The module B1 has a lot of rooms where it doesn't state what the treasure is or the monster is. It's kind of just like an empty space, and there's space in the module for you to write. And same thing here. So the reason why I had this printed out, we can see here that you've got some empty stuff. Because the intent of this module was to have a DM start to run it with the basic premise to get you going, right? To get you started. But then you fill in and you do what's right for your table. Now, there was a whole history behind this where it got canceled. That's why I say this is an orange one, because there's also a green one. The green one was finally the one that went out there. And the green one is not like that at all. And in fact, it's more filled in. And I wonder if how much that has to do with, the idea that they were changing the way they were doing things. Because also, if you look at Keep on the Borderlands B2, you'll see that one of the complaints that people put out there is that Gygax didn't name the NPCs. He's so lazy. But the reason why he didn't, in my opinion, is because, and most of them aren't named here either, is because they want you to shape things to suit your world. And if the names of people will put something in your mind, it'll set a vision, right? So if you are a home brewer DM and you're home, creating stuff for your world, and you've got this whole world and everybody has names that are, let's say, Germanic, so like German sounding or whatever, and all of a sudden these are, Dutch, right? It's not going to work, right? You have to change them anyways. So by having no names, I think it works. And like the debate that goes on, all the people that hate B2 because there's no names, go ahead, comment below. But I never found it to be a problem, even though I'm not great at coming up with names on the fly. This one actually addresses it and says that things aren't named and that you should name them. So I think that's kind of cool too. But anyway, my point being here is that I think as the game grew and more and more people started playing it, and they saw they could make more money for modules, the modules started to become more and more story-based, where it became less like that you could put it, and now I'm talking as we get closer to today, less that you could put it in your campaign than that it is a campaign. And you even have that, right? You have these full books like Curse of Strahd, right, or whatever, where like you or Dragon, I don't know the 5e campaigns, but there's all these hardbound books that have a campaign fixed for you to play. And I'm sure, I haven't played them, except for Strahd, that you can change and manipulate stuff on some level, but it's really designed to be run the way that it's run, right? It's really made that way. Almost like tournament modules were. They were made a certain way so that everybody would run them the same. And I wonder if that takes away from some of the beauty that is D&D. The idea that like you should be creating your own content because you're going to create it for your table. I said that when I had taught on, we were talking about Mega Dungeons. I think, which by the way, yes, I will get back to that. I think I'm going to do it on a different day and maybe do it live. Let me know what you think about that. Would you like to see the Mega Dungeon being built live and that way you guys can interact with it? Let me know about that, either here or on Twitch. Anyways, lost my train of thought. The idea that you build something for your players, right? For the players that are in front of you, that works for your players. And this is, I think, the next series of videos, I'm going to talk a little bit about this because I think it's super important. The idea that, like, when you are creating a campaign and you've got player characters in it, and you've got players in it, you can shape your campaign to what the people at your table really like, especially if you make it from scratch, or if you have something that's very much more loose. So I tend to like adventures that are open-ended, and that I can insert into my own campaign and make changes to. I find that makes it a lot easier for me anyways as DM to run them. Now, some people just want it laid out for them, and some people love the story, and that's cool too. We ran Coriolis and the first part of Coriolis campaign, and that's very much like that. It's like this runs like this. You certainly can change things, but, it's all based on the politics and this and that, so it's like you can't really change much or else it's going to start, spreading out. So, whereas if you run something more basic, as far as a module, it's not so tied in. You can have you can put your own king in charge, or your own queen, or your own warlords, or whatever. You don't need to use the names in the book because it's not that relevant. So the idea that you can just make it up yourself is something that I think I had to blow up audio there. The idea that you can just make it up yourself, I think, is one of those situations that maybe we've forgotten over time. That we need to maybe get back to. I think as DMs that we should do this. Now, this is being said, I think that there's also an overabundance, which is amazing, of great tools and things out there. And I'm referring to a lot of people today. If you've ever seen Alton Brown, who had a show on the Food Network called Good Eats, I think he does other things now. I think he said in one of his books he was talking about the idea that like he used to have this kitchen full of all these different devices, a pan for each type of food he was cooking, different types of knives to do all kinds of different stuff, little devices that did all kinds of little doodads. Everything did its own thing, and it did that thing really well. And this whole kitchen full of it. And then, he jokes that there was an intervention and his family came and took all the stuff out. And they left him with just like a knife and a cast iron skillet or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was. And then he had to kind of relearn to build from the most simple tools. And now his idea is that nothing in his kitchen is a single task, except for the fire extinguisher. Who says that? So like anything that he has should be multitask. Anything that only does one thing is not really worth it for him. He wants tools that do a lot. And I think when you want a tool that does a lot of things, what you actually want, some might be thinking, well, a complicated tool, what you want is the most simple tool that can then be manipulated. So if we think about, let's say going all the way back to original Dungeons & Dragons, you've only got 3 classes. You've essentially got a fighting person, right? The fighting man, as they call it, but a fighter, right? Somebody who focuses on martial, somebody who is a magic user, a wizard, And then you've got the cleric, which is like you're bringing the gods into it, right? You've got your holy warrior. And from those three classes, we have essentially built out the gazillion, trillion, billion classes that exist now in 5th edition, right? And from three basic fantasy races, we've built out, well, 4 if you count human, or human fantasy race. We've built out all these different races. So starting from scratch, you can actually build out everything. So instead of taking, if you're running 5th edition, instead of taking every book that comes out and adding in every single class or race species option that they have, why not just roll back to the most basic? And then from there, shape and sculpt the classes that you want for your world and that your players want. When a player approaches you and says, I want to play a really dedicated warrior that's on a mission that does that, well, this is basically like with the modern version of the paladin, right? This is the paladin, right? Now you need this in your world because somebody wants to be that. But just laying it all out there, maybe that's not the easiest way to do it for somebody, especially if you want to homebrew and switch things up. So I guess what I'm saying here is it's great to add stuff, right, to our world and change things, but we also want to consider not overdoing it. Giving new players 15 options for classes might not be the best option, especially if they're new players, especially if they're new to OSR. They might look at it and be like, oh man, when I was playing 5th edition, I could say play 17 different races, I could play this and that. And sometimes it's nice to say, hey, okay, that's a fighter. You want to be a pirate or warrior, that's a fighter. You want to be a knight, that's a fighter. You want to be a swashbuckler, that's a fighter. And really narrow it down and let the role play and then little things that you add to make you work in your world be the way to go, as opposed to having tons of stuff piled on. Also, I find that you end up with better balance that way, because you know what's going to work in your world, at least to some extent, and not taking some third-party homebrew thing stuck in your world. So, as much as I'm all about people putting out awesome stuff and I love reading different classes and stuff, I very rarely use just off the book a random class that somebody made for BX, let's say, in my game, because I find usually they don't work in my game. So, in any case, what do you guys think? What do you use? Do you homebrew? Do you use modules? Do you just not have time for it, or you don't have an interest in it? Like, where does the focus? What do you guys like to do? Do you create whole systems, for systems from whole cloth, I should say, or do you manipulate things that are out there? Do you, bring in all kinds of extra races with little powers to them, or do you just basically stick to the original ones? What do you guys do? I want to know, and I'd be interested in knowing. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, of course, and ring the bell. I'm trying to get these videos out to more people, so if you don't mind, share them around, different groups you're a part of, Discords or Facebooks or whatever. I would love to get some more people watching to get the conversation going. I love all the different thoughts when people write in the comments, and I do attempt to answer all of them, at least as best as I can. So that being said, I will see you next week.